Hello, and welcome to On My Shelf. Today I'm talking about an engaging middle grade book about a girl whose search for the truth leads her to questioning right and wrong, even when opposition against her stands strong. From the Desk of ZOE Washington by Janae Marks features ZOE Washington, a young girl who seemingly out of the blue gets a letter from her dad, who is incarcerated for a crime he says he didn't commit. She starts wondering if he's really innocent. Can he be when he's in prison? ZOE resolves to uncover the truth. She starts sending him letters, which she hides from her mom, to find out more about her father and his crime. While conducting her personal secret investigation, she focuses on her bakery internship and trying to prove to her parents that she's mature enough to audition for Food Network's Kids Bake Challenge. Janae Marks is also the author of A Soft Place to Land and On Air with ZOE Washington, which is the sequel to this book. I've read it also and enjoyed it just as much as the first one. There were many things to enjoy about From the Desk of ZOE Washington, and the first is baking. I love reading about kids who enjoy baking. ZOE enjoys baking and creating her own recipes since she's trying to get on Food Network's Kids Bake Challenge. Every summer, my kids and I bake together, so there are all kinds of fond memories associated with any mention of baking. Not only that, but ZOE's creativity made me want to go bake some things, and especially eat them. ZOE also has a very helpful grandmother. I love books that have grandparents in them because I had a wonderful grandmother who shows up in many of my stories, so I also enjoy other authors' grand characters. ZOE had a grandmother who was wise and also incredibly supportive. She helped ZOE learn what she needed to learn and kept her on a steady path of growth. I also really enjoyed that this book addressed systemic racism. This was a big topic to take on in a middle grade book, but it was done in such a perfect way. ZOE learns about the prison system and how Black men are unfairly targeted and sometimes put in prison for crimes they didn't do. Marks approached the subject with care and framed it around the curiosity of ZOE, a 12-year-old girl. The questions she asked felt very genuine for that age group, and readers learn a little something too. From a craft perspective, I really enjoyed how Marks explores secrets and lies. Sometimes in kids' literature, we're afraid of approaching this whole secrets and lies thing. ZOE tells some lies, and she keeps some secrets, especially from her mother. And there are very real consequences, strained relationships and grounding, but the reality is also that sometimes rules don't make sense, like ZOE's mom not letting her get to know her dad. And sometimes things aren't fair, like ZOE's dad being in prison for a crime he may not have committed. ZOE realizes this as she begins talking with her father and hearing his story and understanding that there are injustices in the world. She chooses secrets and lies, and she deals with the consequences of those secrets and lies. I also really enjoyed the realistic outcomes. This is a spoiler, but I was glad that ZOE didn't get to try out for the Kids Bake Challenge. Everything would have tied up a little too neatly, and life doesn't tie up neatly. There are all kinds of disappointments and consequences for our actions. Sometimes we choose one thing, and that causes another thing to go out of reach. We can't have it all. Or rather, as Judy Blume says, we can have it all, just not all at the same time. And the third piece from the craft perspective that I really enjoyed about this book were the friendship woes. The friendship dynamic of this story was very compelling. The misunderstandings and the conflict and the forgiveness that came later. Friends are important for middle school kids, but those friendships are also fraught with conflict. Everybody's trying to figure out who they are and what they want. I found those relationship dynamics to be accurate and an enjoyable piece of the book. So here's what we can take away from the Desk of ZOE Washington. Number 1, kids can have large doses of empathy. I already knew this. I have a son who has a very large dose of empathy. His superpower is emotional intelligence, and he's been that way since he was very young. In the story, ZOE also has a large dose of empathy for her friends, for her dad. It reinforced for me that the people who say kids don't have that level of emotional intelligence have simply never met a kid like ZOE or a kid like my son. That doesn't mean they don't exist. So be brave in writing empathetic young characters. Number 2, supporting relationships are important. I've already mentioned Zoe's grandmother. In reading From the Desk of ZOE Washington, I was reminded that sometimes characters can talk to their grandparents more comfortably than they can talk to their parents. This was true in my life, too. While grandparents show up a lot in my books, it made me think about other family members who might show up as major or minor characters: aunts, uncles, cousins, anything outside of the regular family unit, even friends of parents or the parents of friends. How can we use other people in our characters' lives to help them grow and transform? Whether it's a good relationship or a not so good one, it makes me want to think hard on this question and give thanks for those people in my own life. And number 3, don't be afraid to approach big topics. As mentioned before, Zoe considers systemic racism and prison inequality in her story. She was a kid taking charge, leading the way towards social justice. As a writer, it reminded me to not be afraid to approach those big topics in my stories, because we can write about them in an understandable way. And as a human being, it reminded me that I always want to be seeking out those big topics and learning more about what I don't understand. When we know better, we do better. I always want to pursue knowing better. That's it for today's On My Shelf. If you're interested in hearing an author's perspective on books, movies, and sometimes TV shows, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.